What is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome to the Week 18 Waiver Wire Show. And Week 18 of fantasy football is absolute madness. Teams are resting starters, stars are playing like one quarter and then disappearing, backups you've never even heard of are suddenly startable, and your championship comes down to whether a guy named Greg something gets red zone targets. Projections mean even less these days. Vegas lines are beyond confusing. Beat writers are tweeting in riddles, and one late inactive player can ruin your entire season. Week 18 isn't fantasy football, it's the Hunger Games. But it is Monday morning, so we're going to try one last Monday night football pick'em here on Underdog. Now feel free to fade me or follow me, but these are the picks we're going with this week. It's Kyle Pitts over 19.5 yards on a long reception, Kyren Williams over 69.5 rushing, plus receiving yards, and then Charlie Warner with just one reception. I don't care if you go backwards 5 yards, big dog, just catch me one football. If this hits, it's a little bit more than 4 times your money, but this deal gets even better right now, so it's still not too late to get signed up on Underdog and come play along with us. All you gotta do is head over to Underdog Fantasy or download the app, create a new account using the referral code HEADLINERS when you do so. Then, all you have to do is make your minimum $10 deposit, but yes, I still have a little bit of a cheat code for you. When you put $5 on the ticket that we just discussed in this video, whether you win or lose, you will have $75 in bonus funds directly added to your account. Then, if this ticket hits, by the time the week is over, you'll have $105 in your account, and even if it misses, you'll still have 80 bucks in there. And that right there will give you some free money to come play along with us during the NFL playoffs. And anything you win is money directly in your pocket. It's weeks worth of fun for just $10, guys. I know you're spending $10 on a lot worse things out there. It's an absolute no-brainer. Now, links to everything are down below in the description, but now we're going to be taking a look at some of the names we have available in Week 18 and some of these scenarios that we have for the teams playing this week as well. And when you get to Week 18, it is super important to know which teams have the most to play for, who have nothing to play for, who's already been eliminated and still may try, but not have any players that play through any major injuries. So let's first start with the teams that have the most to play for here in Week 18. We got the Steelers and the Ravens. They're fighting for the division and a playoff spot. I'm actually going to be in Pittsburgh for this game. It's Sunday Night Football, and I'm probably going to freeze my nuts off. After that, we have the Panthers and the Bucks facing each other as well, fighting for the division and a playoff spot. They're going to be trying their hardest to win this game. How about the Jags and Texans? Once again, 2 teams fighting for that division. We have the Seattle Seahawks. They're fighting for the NFC West and the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. Same with the San Francisco 49ers in that matchup as well. Then we have the Denver Broncos. They're still trying for that number 1 seed, as well as the New England Patriots, who are also fighting for that number 1 seed. Now, we have a few teams that have little to play for and that are already in the playoffs. They could be resting some of their starters. The first team, the Los Angeles Chargers, they can't really improve their seed, and they need to be as healthy as possible because they haven't been for quite some time. The Bills could rest their starters here this week. The Philadelphia Eagles, they sat Saquon in a record year last year in Week 18. They could do the same here this year as well. Then we also have the Green Bay Packers, who are beat up beyond belief when it comes to injuries. They need to rest up. The Rams as well, and then the Chicago Bears. Now, at the time of this recording, nothing officially has come out with these teams, but these are the ones we're looking at that have the highest likelihood of resting some starters. Now, after that, we got a long list of teams that are eliminated. They have nothing to play for here this weekend, but a lot of these teams haven't had much to play for weeks. I really just look at it like this. If there are any players that are currently dealing with some sort of an injury, maybe not a major injury, but they've been playing hurt, they probably don't in Week 18. But if they're healthy, more than likely the starters will be out there for these teams. We got the Indianapolis Colts, the Miami Dolphins, Cincinnati Bengals. Then we got the Chiefs, the Browns, the Titans, the Jets, the Raiders, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Commanders, the Saints, Falcons, Cowboys, Lions, and Vikings. Now, when you're setting your lineup in Week 18, one of the most important things you can do is try to really focus on the players in the games that really have something to play for. If I have a choice between a player on a team that's fighting for a playoff spot or a player that really doesn't give a crap because the game is meaningless, I'm always going to go towards the player that has something to play for. Now, when it comes to the Week 18 waiver wire, slightly disgusting, right? The quarterback position, not great. We got Tyler Shuck out there. He's 20% owned going up against Atlanta. And it seems like every single week, people look at his performance and just think it's a fluke and don't want to trust it the next week. Then he goes out there and does it again. He is the QB 7 overall over the last 5 weeks of the season, scoring at least 19 points in all 5 of those games. Now he's going up against Atlanta, who allows 17 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, and really no reason for him to rest right now. How about Cam Ward in Tennessee? 9% owned going up against Jacksonville, and Ward has really become an option over the last month or so of the fantasy football season. He's had 15 plus fantasy points in 3 straight games, and has had multiple touchdown passes in 4 straight games. Now, he struggled against this Jags team a few weeks back, but if I had to guess, they're going to be trailing and having to throw the football a ton once again, and if we can rack up some garbage points, I'll take those this week. Now, after that, though, with all the injuries and the starters potentially being rested, there's not a lot of great matchups for quarterbacks on the waiver wire. So let's go ahead and go down to the running back position. How about Malik Davis in Dallas? 2% owned going up against the Giants. We saw Javonte Williams suffer a shoulder injury, nothing major, but this is a meaningless game against the Giants. Now, Javonte should be a priority offseason signing for Dallas, which means why throw him out there in a meaningless game and risk further injury? We saw Malik Davis last week come out and get 20 carries for 103 yards. Now he faces the Giants, who allow the 5th most fantasy points per game to the running back position. How about Audric Estime of the New Orleans Saints, 12% owned going up against Atlanta? Obviously, he had his best game ever last week, but I would be lying to you if I thought that he could do it again. And I say that because 9.2 of his 16.3 points came off of just one big run. And he's really not known for being a big play type of guy. Now he gets a matchup going up against Atlanta, whose run defense is really hit or miss. They're either shut down or they're Swiss cheese. You just never really know what you're gonna get with that defense. Now, after that, we got Devin Singletary of the New York Giants. He's 30% owned going up against Dallas. He has had at least 12 touches now in 5 of his last 6 games played, and over that span has 4 touchdowns. Now, this is a meaningless game going up against Dallas, and New York has run the ball 30 plus times now in back-to-back games. Don't be surprised if he's utilized once again in Week 18. How about Ray Davis in Buffalo? Only 2% owned going up against the Jets. Now, full disclosure, this could very easily be Ty Johnson, but if the Bills decide to rest James Cook, it makes the most sense to take these reps and give them to Ray Davis on the early down running work, especially in a matchup like this against the Jets, who allow the 3rd most fantasy points per game to the running back position. Heck, you could probably go out there and add Ray Davis and Ty Johnson if you wanted to this week. Then lastly, how about Tank Bigsby in Philadelphia? Only 18% owned going up against Washington, and like I mentioned earlier, if Philadelphia rested Saquon Barkley last season in a record year, why would they not do the same thing this week, this year? Now, Will Shipley will be involved, but Tank should see the majority of the early down work against a Washington defense that allows the 4th most points to the running back position. How about some ball catchers? Parker Washington, 30% owned going up against Tennessee. He's been in this show multiple weeks, and he still has value this week. Jacksonville and Houston are still fighting for that division, and Washington has 10 targets in each of his last 2 games. He also has back-to-back 100-yard games, and now goes against Tennessee, who allows the 7th most points to opposing wide receivers. Then we go down to Isaac Tesla of the Detroit Lions, 5% owned going up against Chicago. Now, Detroit isn't in the playoff hunt, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is banged up. There is just no reason for them to throw Amon-Ra out there and overwork him in a game that means nothing for him, so there's a chance that TeSlaa could be more involved. He was second on the team in targets just last week, and he's going against Chicago, who could be resting the majority of their starters. How about Jalen McMillan of the Tampa Bay Bucks, 2% owned, going up against Carolina, and this is a fight for the division and the playoffs. Now, McMillan led this team in targets last week with 9, turned it into 114 yards receiving. A lot of that Carolina attention is going to be on Mike Evans, which means Jalen McMillan could see more one-on-one coverage and exploit that once again, and has the potential for a solid game. How about Christian Kirk in Houston, 10% owned, going up against Indianapolis? Now, Houston, they still want to win this game. They have a chance at the division. And Christian Kirk didn't do much last week in week 17, but he led the team in targets, and Indianapolis has been torched by slot wide receivers for the last few weeks. Plus, they have nothing to play for anymore. Now, a lot of people are going to see Christian Kirk and be like, dude, why are we not talking Jaden Higgins or Jalen Knoll? Honestly, great question. And honestly, the best answer that I can give is because Christian Kirk is in the slot, and that is where Indy has struggled mightily over the last few weeks. Sure, those other guys may have an opportunity at some bigger plays, but if we're looking for a guy that has a potential for more volume, could be Christian Kirk here this week. All right, how about the tight end position? The first guy up, Chiggy Okonkwo of the Tennessee Titans. He's 17% owned, going up against Jacksonville, and Chiggy now has 7+ targets in back-to-back games. Van Jefferson is done for the year, and the Jags allow the 9th most fantasy points to tight ends. Then we get down to Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 10% owned, going up against Baltimore. Sunday Night Football against Baltimore for the division, and there will be no Darnell Washington, who was out for this game due to an injury in week 17. We've seen Jonnu Smith be a little bit more of a short check down option, but Patty F led the team in receiving last week with 5 targets, 3 catches for 63 yards, and don't forget, DK Metcalf still suspended. Then we get down to Greg Dulcich of the Miami Dolphins, 0% owned, going up against the Patriots. The Patriots are still going to be fighting for that number 1 overall seed, which sucks for the Miami Dolphins, but right now it seems like Greg Dulcich is the favorite target of Quinn Ewers. Now, we saw Jalen Waddle get banged up in week 17. There's a chance he doesn't play in week 18, and the Patriots do allow 12 fantasy points per game to the tight end position. Dulcich has some sleeper upside in week 18, as well as Michael Mayer of the Las Vegas Raiders, 10% owned, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. And with Brock Bowers done for, we saw Mayer go out there and get 10 targets, 9 catches, and 89 yards. Now, there is a chance that Geno Smith does not play this week due to a high ankle sprain, but going up against a depleted Kansas City defense in a meaningless game could lean to more reps going his way in week 18, and he could be a potential surprise for us once again. But now that we know who's out there, how do we rank these guys? Well, Parker Washington at the top of my list as of right now, back-to-back 100-yard games in a game they need to win against Tennessee, followed by Jalen McMillan, highly involved in week 17, a game upcoming against Carolina in which they need to win. Malik Davis, if we do not have Javonte Williams, great matchup for him going up against the Giants. Then Audric Estime, who should be the lead back in the Saints backfield here this week. Then we get down to Ray Davis, hoping he gets that early down volume if they decide to rest James Cook. Then we go down to Tank Bigsby. If they rest Saquon Barkley, he becomes a solid option going up against Washington. Reason he's not a little bit higher, we really don't know how much is Will Shipley going to be involved as well. Then we get Devin Singletary, going to see right around 10 to 12 touches with still Tyrone Tracy in that backfield. Then we get Christian Kirk and Isaac TeSlaa. If you're looking for a quarterback, I'm going Tyler Shuck and then Cam Ward. And then at the tight end position, we're going Patty F with no Darnell Washington in a must-win game for Pittsburgh, then Michael Mayer, Greg Dulcich, and then finish it out with Chigga Okonkwo. So there you have the waiver wire rankings, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to know about Luther Burden after what he did in week 17. Is he a waiver wire option? And I contemplated putting him in this show, but we did see him go down the last play of the game in week 17 against San Francisco. Now, reports, they've already come out and said it's not a major injury. He said he was just super tired. But we also know that DJ Moore was sick. We know that Roma Dunze has been injured, and this game in week 18 is pretty meaningless for the Chicago Bears. Do they decide to rest Luther Burden? If we knew for sure he was playing, he'd probably be on the top of our power rankings here for waiver wire ads, but at this point, we don't even know if he's going to play or not. Now, obviously, I love the potential of Luther Burden if he were to play, but as of right now, with so many questions, I just left him out of the show. You can choose to add him if you want to take that risk or not. But there you have the Week 18 Waiver Wire Show, our last Waiver Wire show of the year. Once again, thank you so much for a great 2025 Headliner Nation. I hope you all had a great Christmas, and I wish you all a happy new year as we head in to 2026.